bit of a pullback in the short term, there is broad expectation from chart analysts that you're absolutely going to see Bitcoin hit a brand new all-time high and enter its final parabolic move in price discovery, finally hitting a peak for the cycle. And then that will be it. We're at the tail end where that's finally going to be the top for Bitcoin. Altcoins will then follow, including XRP. And one XRP chart analyst says, and I quote, XRP is gearing up for a 2017 style run, end quote. Now, I like that, and I'm sure you do too, unless you're brand new and don't know the reference. But 2017 was absolutely bananas for XRP. It went on a run, I kid you not, from the bottom of the market to the top of about 80,000% literally. 80,000 freaking percent. Now, not that we'll have the same percentage this time because, of course, there's more money in XRP, but in terms of just it's the concept of it going completely crazy, yeah, that I absolutely do buy into. Because historically, the second run for XRP compared to its first run in the cycle, it just dwarfs it in terms of price appreciation in terms of United States dollars or, pick your fiat currency. And it makes sense because at the end of the cycle, when you have that second run for XRP, that's when you get the altcoin euphoria. So it stands to reason, of course, you should expect XRP's next major move to be way more impressive than the move from 49 cents to $3.65. In terms of dollars, yeah, it would be weird if it weren't higher. That would be a historic first. So anyway, lots of reasons to be very optimistic here. You're going to like this video. But before going further, I do want to be slightly lower for the last 24 hours, but this is just a normal consolidation range. Nothing to be fearful of here. Bitcoin's at $122,367. Many analysts think getting ready to push up against that all-time high. But there's resistance, as Mikey Bull Crypto points out. Bitcoin USD chart here, and he says, Bitcoin is facing resistance, a must level to watch. A meaningful breakout will bring it to $136,000 to $150,000. And he does believe that this thing's going to break to the upside, ultimately. He's not promising it's going to happen this second, and as I cited right at the outset of the video, of course there's always that possibility you can move to the downside. Tons of analysts I follow recognize that, but moving a bit to the downside doesn't mean that structure is broken on a higher time frame. We're nowhere near such danger. Here's a post from chart analyst Galaxy, and he's showing the entire crypto asset class. This is the total chart. He says the total crypto market cap chart looks ready to enter uncharted territory. And this is just one example that I've seen from tons of chart analysts that I follow echoing this concept. This thing is ready to freaking blow. It is right there. It is primed. And it makes sense that this would be what chart analysts are saying for this phase of the cycle, the end phase of the cycle, which we are fast approaching. But I will tell you, look, even though there's probably not that much time left, if history is to rhyme with itself, that last 10% or so of the cycle, that's when the most crazy, life-changing wealth opportunities pop up. That's what we're about to enter, if history rhymes with itself. Here's a post from chart analyst Dom. He's also talking about the entire crypto asset class in this chart. This is the total chart, so everything's in there, including XRP. And he said, let me put it very simple. If this market fails to expand this month, it would be the first time in history a top was put in with the classic vertical accumulation pattern. And that's what he says is playing out here. What he's citing right here at the end, this is an enlarged version right here, removing my mouse, but right there, that's what he's citing as the vertical accumulation pattern. And he's saying, if the top's already in, that's the first time in history that you see this pattern and it's actually just fooling you. I'm just telling you. And there's so many other reasons. In recent days, I've been going to great lengths to cite why historic precedent should have you believe that what is probable, though not certain, probable by a lot though, is that you are going to see the Russell 2000 expand and finally break out, because we have, and by the way, we've hit multiple new all-time highs within the last couple of weeks there on the Russell 2000. You know that altcoins follow that. So you should expect, based on historic precedent, that is what's going to unfold. You can look at all sorts of various metrics, including the business cycle, global M2, you name it. Everything points to this thing is going higher. And even if Bitcoin doesn't hit a new all-time high, which is possible, though I'm skeptical of that. I think what's more probable is that Bitcoin's going to hit a final new all-time high and enter that final parabolic surge. We'll see. But even if it doesn't, which I acknowledge is possible, even if it doesn't, you're still going to see a crazy alt season because money, of course, is going to rotate through the entire crypto space. That doesn't change regardless. We still get to have our crazy alt season. It's just that if Bitcoin goes higher in price, there's going to be that much more money flowing through. So even if you don't hold Bitcoin, as I keep saying, I've been saying a lot over the last couple of days, you better hope it runs higher because that means your alts will run even further than they otherwise would. Take a look at this post from Tobias Carlisle, and he's a portfolio manager at Acquirers Fund. And so he does this stuff for a living, and he's just sharing some historical perspective. I want to break this down and explain to you why this matters if you're in crypto and an XRP holder. And so he wrote the following: small S&P 600, which is the line in red on your screen, and then mid cap, which is the S&P 400, that's the blue line. And then he says stocks trade at a 30% valuation discount to large caps, and smalls trade at a small discount to mids, which is the green line. It says the last time this happened in the late 1990s, smalls and mids outperformed for a decade. At the end of that decade, in 2010, small and mid caps traded at a 30% premium to large caps. Inevitably, smalls and mids will overshoot again. So let's put this in context. This chart, to be clear, this chart shows how small and mid cap stocks, so again, the S&P 600 and the S&P 400, are now trading at roughly a 30% valuation discount to large caps. So in other words, the smaller companies inside the S&P 400 and the S&P 600 are far cheaper relative to the S&P 500 than they've been in decades. The last time we saw a setup like this was in the late 1990s. And back then, mind you, that's when large cap tech stocks were stretched to the extremes, major extremes, while smaller companies were left behind. Okay, does it sound familiar? Well, what happened next? Over the following decades, small and mid caps massively outperformed, and by 2010, they were actually trading at a premium to large caps. Now, history, of course, doesn't perfectly repeat, but it often rhymes. And the gap we're seeing right now is about as wide as it's ever been. So if history does indeed rhyme with itself, it could mark the start of a rotation into undervalued assets because markets find undervalued assets and segments, and then the market ultimately adjusts. The same thing people are talking about. This is the same thing people talk about when they point to Total 2, which is, of course, the entire crypto asset. Well, the top 125 coins by market cap, excluding Bitcoin. That's what Total 2 is. Or when people point to the Russell 2000, which, of course, is small cap stocks. When they point to Total 2 or the Russell 2000 being way underpriced compared to, major indexes like the S&P 500 and NASDAQ. And so when money starts flowing out of overcrowded large caps, it usually looks for more rewarding opportunities, smaller caps, risk assets, and yes, crypto, because of course, cryptocurrencies are risk assets, including XRP. That's why I'm highlighting this, okay? So while this chart is about equities, it sends a much broader signal, it's certainly fair to say. So if capital begins rotating towards undervalued, higher upside areas of the market, that could easily spill over into the altcoin space. And for XRP, which has spent years lagging behind the big movers, obviously it's performed well since November, a shift in sentiment toward, like a beaten down but undervalued asset, well, that could be exactly the kind of environment where it finally catches fire heading into the end of this market cycle. And wouldn't this be the time for that to happen? Isn't everything perfectly primed, don't you see? And so you can look at this point to drive the point home further. Look at this chart. This is from the Blockchain Backer. He posted this yesterday morning. And you can see that you've got up top here the S&P 500, you've got the NASDAQ and Dow Jones and Bitcoin. And look at how they've moved together to the upside. They've gotten that upside, okay? And look at how they've moved throughout 2025. And yes, there's a correlation with the Russell 2000 and altcoins, but look at how much more pitiful the move is compared to these indexes up here and Bitcoin. What I'm saying is altcoins and the Russell 2000, they're undervalued. They're absolutely undervalued. Markets eventually recognize this and then they play catch up. So you don't know exactly when that's going to happen, but either you have exposure when it happens or you don't. Either you have exposure to the markets when it happens or you don't. So I don't know if it's today, tomorrow, next week, next month, but you know what? Whenever that does happen, I'm going to make, my net worth is going to go up dramatically because I'm going to be here when it happens. I'm going to be holding. That's what I do. What I do is nothing. Literally, after I buy stuff, I do nothing. I hodl. That is it. And it sounds easier than it actually is for most people. Like for me, it actually is easy. I have no trouble holding and going through this volatility. But for most people, it is just a matter of fact statement so far as I'm concerned, that doing nothing is very difficult. When markets go down, you feel like you need to tinker and move stuff, and I got to fix the problem. But the reality is the market's still going to trend to the upside even if you just do nothing. And by tinkering with stuff, you're more likely to screw something up and miss opportunities than you are to fix something. So for the average person, and I do consider myself just a regular average person, I just hold. I've been doing it in crypto for almost 8 years, and it's made my net worth ridiculously larger than it would otherwise be. And you can choose to do that too if you want. You do whatever you want. I'm not telling you to buy or sell or hold. You do. I don't know what's best for you on an individual level. Do whatever you want. I'm just telling you, I know that this has worked for me, and I'm just going to keep doing it. Works in the stock market. It works in crypto. Just have broad exposure and then ride everything out. Here's a post from chart analyst Bobby A. It says, make no mistake, we currently find ourselves in a highly fearful market environment with Bitcoin trading at $122,500 total, which is the entire crypto asset class, in price discovery, Bitcoin dominance showing higher time frame weakness, the Russell 2000 ready to break out, check monthly, and a dovish Fed. I never thought the market would be this afraid and bearish under these conditions. Expect maximum fuckery from market makers, but don't think for 1 second that risk assets aren't going higher, because they are. And there you go. I share the sentiment. And Crypto Insight UK responded to this, and he noted that the Russell 2000 hit a weekly all-time high close. Yes, please. Thank you very much. I'll take 2. Here's another post from Bobby A talking about XRP specifically. Listen to this one. You're going to love this. He says, XRP. This is like exactly what my messaging has been for years. And it just, like, I know it to be true. If more people would just do nothing for like ridiculously long periods of time, they'd get rich. But they just seem to be incapable because the emotions get to them, and I got to tinker with my position. So I got to sell this and chase that and just all that. I know it's true that patience wins. Okay. I'm living proof, and I'm getting ridiculously wealthy from this stuff. You can do it. You just need to not. Look, when it comes to investing, you are your own worst enemy. That's typically the case. Because if anyone's going to screw this up, it is going to be you. And it's probably going to be due to emotions and thinking that you're smarter than the broader market. Why mess with that when you can literally just get rich by doing nothing? Like, why mess with that? Like, even if you're right, are you sure you want to take that risk for any individual move? Even if you look like, I thought that would be right, and then it happened. Well, okay, maybe. Are you sure you want to risk that? And how many times in a row do you get something right, but then you do something wrong, and then you're set back way more than you otherwise would have been if you just did nothing? Like, ain't worth it, folks. So anyway, here's what Bobby had to say. He said, XRP, all you have to do is wait, literally. We didn't come this far to get shaken out by lower time frame BS. Could the asset correct? Of course. Corrections are required in every market. That said, don't let the lower time frame chop, just meaning short-term price action, don't let lower time frame chop misguide you into losing sight of the fact that the asset has broken out of a 7-year triangle and a macro double bottom. XRP has spent the last 10 months building support above its prior cycle's highest ever monthly candle close in a fearful market environment. That matters more than anything seen on the 1-hour time frame. In my opinion, corrections are for strengthening positions, not capitulation at this stage of the cycle. Should the asset correct, look for entries near the golden pocket between approximately $2.50 and $2.55. Additionally, monitor the 50-week moving average, which is rising and passing through $2.38. Actually, let me pause. I'm going to come right back to this post, but I want to note eGreg Crypto. He cited here, if we do go down, which he acknowledges is possible, he says $2.88 to $2.81 should hold us. If not, then $2.40 to $2.65 is market structure support. So he's not saying we have to go that lower or that we will. He's acknowledging that it's possible. He still believes that wouldn't break higher time frame structure and that we would still ultimately rip to the upside. Anyway, and then so back to the Bobby A post. He says, XRP is a highly volatile asset. It could correct as low as $2 to test the multi-month base it has built, which would not change a thing about the analysis or where it is going. In fact, that would only make me more bullish, as it would confirm the asset is in a macro range, building support and gaining price acceptance as it prepares to enter price discovery. As I have mentioned for years, only the strongest climbers will reach the top of this mountain. I think that's a great post. I mean, think about it. He's so right. It's broken after all these years, the better part of a decade. It's been consolidating. And it's true that it, probably consolidated a lot longer than it would have because of that SEC attack. But that means there's so much pent up right here, so much pent up energy. When this thing goes, it's going to be far greater than it otherwise would have in terms of percentage gains this cycle. So there is that, silver lining, I suppose. But it just seems so obvious. And he is absolutely correct about the macro environment we find ourselves in. I firmly agree with that because it's just data. And then you can look at historic precedent. Like everything tells us that what is most probable, though not certain. I almost never speak in absolutes. What is most probable, though not certain, is that you're going to see things go absolutely nuts. Bitcoin's probably going to hit a new all-time high. And then it's a virtual certainty that you're going to have some sort of crazy alt season. XRP is going to go along with it. And that's where we get our crack at achieving life-changing wealth. We just got to, just like a dollar cost average in, you got to do the same on the way out. And so you have to actually hit the sell button at some point. For me, it's going to be at various points. I'm not going to try and sell everything at one price. I think that's a silly mistake to make. I'll be selling at all sorts of different price points, and I'm not going to beat myself up for not selling the top because I know I can't do that. Just like I knew I couldn't buy the bottom. You don't know when the market's going to bottom exactly. You don't know when the market's going to peak exactly. You just get in that range and then get exposure to various price points, and then it averages out to something that's very appealing. That's the strategy, basically. Don't beat yourself up for not selling the top, but you should beat yourself up if you aim to take profit going into this and then you never pull the trigger on taking profit. Then maybe you should beat yourself up and learn from it. But, because if you accidentally round trip, that's not good. If you intentionally round trip because you're just a long-term hodler, that's a different story. If you know you're round tripping and that's what you want to do and you just don't give a damn, that's reasonable. That's fine. You can have your own strategy. There's nothing wrong with that. If you're just waiting until, like for me, I haven't cashed out to USD yet because I promised myself in 2017 I would not cash out my crypto portfolio to United States dollars until my portfolio was in life-changing wealth territory. And I'm now there. I'm just waiting for this peak, to finally hit, and then I'm going to do it. So there's nothing wrong with round tripping if you know why you're doing it, what you're doing, and if that's your strategy. I just feel bad for people if they haven't learned what they needed to learn, then they make the mistake of not selling when they have life-changing wealth. That's the bad, that's where it's like, yeah, you're going to beat yourself up, and you probably should learn from that. So it just depends on what your strategy is, but anyway, here's a post from Crypto Insight UK. He says, I will reiterate what I keep saying. I am bullish. I think Bitcoin goes to $150,000 plus, likely $180,000 plus this cycle. And my minimum XRP target range is $8 to $12. Doesn't mean I'll be right, but there is little to no action for me to take until then. This is what I truly believe. Yeah, so look, I got to tell you, I think that's perfectly reasonable. I don't make price predictions myself, but nothing's crazy there. If he's right about the Bitcoin price range, won't be surprised. If he's right about XRP, won't be surprised. Now, he does think there's a really good chance XRP goes more like the $20 to $30. He's talked about that in separate posts, and he could be right about that. But when he says here, regardless, there's no action for him to take until you get to these points. Yeah, same here. I'm going to take literally no action. And you know what? If say the worst happens, what's the worst? So there's no Bitcoin new all-time high, and then for the first time in history, there's no alt season for this market cycle, which I think is an absurd proposition. But let's just say that happens. I'm not going to cry a river. You know what I'm going to do? We'll look back and we'll do a post-mortem on it, like I always say. But I'm going to do literally nothing because I know that markets rebound. So even if I have to wait another several years, I'm still going to be here because I cannot control that. I'm at peace with that. And that's the big part of the message I want to deliver on this channel. Control the parts that you can control and let go of the rest. You control what you do. You don't control when the market goes or doesn't go. Either you have exposure when it happens or you don't. That's that. And so that's why I say, if it doesn't go here and I wasn't enticed to sell, okay, well then my enticement goals haven't been set, and I will wait X number of years, however long it takes, until the market rallies up, and then I still believe we'll get there. And I think if you can just get to peace with that type of concept, you are way ahead of the typical lemming retail speculator. If you can make peace with that concept, you are light years ahead, because people in mass have trouble with that. I am telling you. Oh, by the way, Crypto Insight UK also stated this afternoon that XRP is oversold on the hourly here. So hopefully that means we're not going to see it go much lower. Hopefully it'll be higher by the time you're watching this. We'll see. Here's a post from Crypto Wizard. It says, explosive XRP breakout. The longer it consolidates, the bigger the expansion. For over 300 days, XRP has been trading just below its previous all-time high, holding its incredible gain. Only a matter of time until $3.65 breaks. $4.50 is inevitable. To be clear, he's talking about the short term here. He doesn't think XRP is going to peak at $4.50. He thinks it goes way higher. He's talked about that many times. But he's right. It's been consolidating for a long time, and we've hit some all-time highs, obviously, this cycle. But there's been a fair bit of consolidation. It's been within a particular range. And it's just a matter of time until we break into face-melting price discovery, which is what we've now been waiting over 8 years for. We haven't gotten that. We did get some new all-time highs, but we haven't gotten that face-melting portion in over 8 years now. I am ready for it. I don't know about you, but I'm ready for it. Or I guess technically, almost 8 years. So, because it peaked January 4, 2018. That was the previous peak from a couple cycles ago. So, it'll be come January. That'll be, a whole nother 8 years. So close. I guess I was rounding up, but still, you get the cut of my jib. Then there's this from the Great Matsby. He says, here are the XRP levels of champions. Write them down because each one will be important on the way up. And so he does firmly believe that we're going to be hitting these. I don't need to read all of them, but he's talking about it peaking here at $12.30. These are the types of expectations I keep seeing from chart analysts. I don't think it's crazy. And these are not like wacky idiot chart analysts. These are analysts who accurately called XRP breaking out this market cycle. So yeah, I'm absolutely willing to listen to what they have to say. They saw what many other analysts did not. Here's a post from Chart Nerd. XRP is gearing up for a 2017 style run and is highly unlikely to bleed back down to 50 cents. And he says it will hold the line above $2, January 2018 candle close highs, and full send to its fib extension targets, $8, then $13 to $15, and then peaking at $27. And he's been insistent about that recently. And I keep seeing these types of expectations from tons of analysts. I don't think any of it's crazy. I don't know if we're going to hit that high, $27. Ain't that crazy? The higher Bitcoin goes, the greater the odds. Like if I see, not that I think this is going to happen, but if Bitcoin hits like $250,000, I'll be sitting there wondering, how could XRP not hit like 20 something bucks? Like how could it not hit, whether it's 27, 25, 26, 27, how could it not hit that if there's that much money in the space? So if you get a wacky Bitcoin price like that, which again, I'm honestly not counting on it going that high, but if it does, hold on to your seats, boys. I'm telling you. Then there's this post from eGreg Crypto, which I covered earlier in the video, so I'm not going to repeat it. But so there's a possibility you could go a little bit lower in the short term. But even if you do see XRP in this range that he's talking about, even as 240, or if like Bobby A was talking about, even a little above $2, that he's saying that doesn't break higher time frame structure. And not the end of the world. Crypto is very volatile, makes you get hurt in your feels, but it doesn't mean that things don't ultimately go higher. And so I'm just going to sit here and hold because I know that I can't control when it happens. That's the best message. It doesn't make sense trying to time the market. It just makes sense to have a very long-term point of view, and I really do. I very genuinely do. I will be more patient than any other human on the planet because that's what it takes. And I really do have this level of conviction that crypto is here to stay, and so is XRP. I've never been more confident in XRP because the fundamentals have never been stronger. So it's not just going to go away when it's useful to people and businesses. It's way less likely to go away because of all the developments that we've seen here. It's just an obvious early winner of the crypto space. So yeah, I'm going to sit on my XRP stash. I'm going to sit on my heavy XRP bags until that son of a bitch goes. And I think it's going to be sooner than later. But my attitude is, even if it's not, too bad. Be small feeling of disappointment. Bummer. I wish I had it now, and then let's move on with life because it doesn't matter. And I'm going to wait. and then it'll come around again. The market always comes back. Everything's going to be fine, folks. Sleep easy at night, okay? The fun part is almost certainly ahead here. I'm not a financial advisor. You should not buy or sell